Today I would like to speak on region as an important factor impinging on political processes in post-independence India. India, as we all know, is a vast landmass consisting of a large number of distinct socio-cultural groups marked by specificities of religion, language, ethnicity, and a host of other socio-cultural factors. As things stand at the moment, India comprises 29 states, 6 union territories, and New Delhi as the national capital territory. Now, during the last 60 years or so, the number of states have gone up from 14 to 29. And still there are demands from different parts of the country for the creation of more and more states. The desire for the creation of new states arises out of the feeling shared by different groups of people inhabiting different regional spaces that they should have autonomy to decide about the policies best suited to their regional interest. Now, the nation state, on the other hand, is primarily concerned with maintaining the sovereignty and integrity of the nation state, allowing limited freedom and opportunities to the constituent states, but not beyond a certain point. So it is, in a way, a very interesting sort of, relationship between the center and the states, centering around a large number of issues. Now, while this is the administrative aspect of the situation, there are other more important socio-cultural factors involved in the present scenario concerning politics of regionalism. Initially, the demand for regional autonomy, in fact, took shape through movements for linguistic autonomy. The best example of this is the North-South divide in Indian society. As we all know, Northern India basically represents the ethos of a Hindustan culture, as opposed to vast areas of Southern India represented by the predominance of the Dravid culture and a number of languages belonging to the Dravidian linguistic family. The first significant spark in regional politics came from the Tamil people of South India who wanted autonomy for their language and who also wanted to enjoy cultural and regional autonomy for the people inhabiting large spaces of the erstwhile Madras Presidency. There were political organizations regionally built up by some of the local leaders. One important such leader happened to be Ramaswamy Naikar, who formed a political organization known as the Dravid Kazhagam, which afterwards, in fact, transformed itself into the Dravid Munnetra Kazhagam and thereafter also into another faction known as the All India Anna Dravid Munnetra Kazhagam. The DMK and the AATM-GYAN between themselves shared the regional ethos of the Tamil people and also the spirit of autonomy for the Tamil language, vis-a-vis the domination of Hindi as the language for national communication on an all India basis. The other regions of South India in fact would also join in this common movement directed against the intended predominance of Hindi. And this is how the different languages belonging to the Dravidian family like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam would begin to assert themselves through various kinds of people's movements. In Andhra Pradesh, the trajectory of the movement for regional autonomy took a different shape altogether. It began in the Telangana region, primarily against the political control of the Nizam, who happened to be the ruler in the erstwhile princely state of Hyderabad. Now, the Andhra Mahasabha came up as a cultural organization mostly comprising the Telugu-speaking people who demand autonomy both from the clutches of Nizam, and on advent of India's independence they would also continue their demand for regional autonomy in the shape of creation of a new state. The creation of Andhra Pradesh as a new state in southern India in fact took time before it finally took off in 1963 when the state of Andhra Pradesh was created. This was preceded by a protracted movement launched by the people of this region, both against the colonial rulers, against the native Nawab, and finally against the Indian state. The demand for a separate state of Andhra Pradesh was finally considered by the government of India following the recommendations of the States Reorganization Commission and also the decision to this effect taken finally in the year 1963. So, the state that came up at that point of time comprised both the coastal regions of Andhra and also the hill and forest terrains of Telangana. So that contained in a way the seeds for further troubles in near future, and the demand for a separate state of Telangana as a distinct entity separate from Andhra Pradesh in fact took shape in 2013. Kerala, again a different political trajectory could be found with the coming together of the erstwhile princely states of Travancore and Cochin together with the Malabar region of the erstwhile Madras Presidency, which gave rise to the new state of Kerala that came up in 1956. Here again, language happened to be the key factor. It was actually a state of the Malayali speaking people. And the princely state of Mysore was converted into the state of Karnataka, again giving expression to the linguistic aspirations of the Kannada speaking people. So the four distinct languages of Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam in fact had their representative political presence through the four states which were created in post-independence India. One distinctive feature of the political developments in South India was that it did not sort of go up to the extent of dividing the nation state or giving rise to a kind of political insurgency that would threaten secession of the southern part of India from the national mainstream. A different kind of trajectory would be found when one sort of shifts one's attention from the south to the northeastern part of the country. The northeast part of the country comprises a number of discrete tribal communities living on the hills and the valleys, marked off from one another in terms of their language, in terms of their culture, in terms of their religion and also their ways of life, and who are also at the same time considerably marked off from the people belonging to the mainstream of the Indian society. These tribal communities also were often expressing their reservations against too much of domination by outsiders into their indigenous economic system, which was based on the principles of self-sufficiency. From time to time, they raised demands for separation from the Indian state altogether, and the movement assumed the form of political insurgency. It involved considerable amount of violence. The state had to intervene with its armed political might, and also at the same time it had to win over sections of these tribal communities by giving them certain concessions. So, on the whole, the scenario in the northeast was not as peaceful as it happened to be in the south. In the northeastern region, there were sort of instances of violence, there were instances of considerable amount of political disturbances from time to time, affecting the overall development of the region. In fact, as we all know, the northeastern region of the country is relatively underdeveloped because of its distance from the center of power on the one hand, and also because of the very composition of the territory itself. The difficulty in accessing many parts of this region, lack of communication facilities that would sort of bring about a smooth economic transactions, flow of resources into the vast tracts of the hilly terrains. Now, as a result, there were instances of violent political upheavals. The Indian state had to contain these movements through the adoption of the twin policies of granting separate statehood or regional autonomy to different tribal communities on the one hand, and through administering doses of socio-economic development to different regions on the other. And beyond these, there were also instances of the state's army and the military intervening from time to time in order to contain the movements within limits. In fact, one of the major issues affecting the relationship between the politics of the center and politics of the northeastern regions is the continuation of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958, which in fact provided enormous power to the army to maintain peace and stability in different parts of the northeast. Altogether, 7 states were created out of the one single state, Assam, during the last 50 or 60 years. Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Meghalaya, Manipur, these were all states created from time to time to cater to the demands of distinct tribal communities inhabiting this space. And of late, the government of India has also contemplated the setting up of a separate department for the development of the northeastern region under the direction of a central minister. So it is basically a question of ensuring socio-economic development of the vast region, which is in fact in a very difficult geographical terrain, and also simultaneously to integrate the northeastern region to the mainstream of Indian politics. Punjab, in fact, was predominantly inhabited by the Sikhs, a religious group that broke away from Hinduism in the 16th century, and who in fact were known for their mobility, for their industriousness, and so on and so forth. Culturally, they in fact constituted a distinct group of people. Now, the Sikhs in fact got the benefit of the minority status during the colonial period. Therefore, it was quite natural for the Sikhs to expect a special status for them at the advent of independence. Now, this is a feeling that gave rise to the spirit of separatism amongst a section of the Sikh people in Punjab. And the situation was further complicated by the fact that after partition, there was a huge influx of Sikh population from Pakistan to India, and they had to be accommodated, they had to be rehabilitated within the soil of Punjab and part of Delhi. Now, this created amongst the Sikhs a feeling of being neglected, of being laid down in post-independence India. Now, this was viewed in two different ways. One view was for a restructuring of center-state relations in true spirit of cooperative federalism. There were some amongst the Sikh leaders in Punjab who demanded separate statehood not as a mark of separatism, but who wanted separate statehood in order to enjoy political and economic autonomy within the overall parameters of the Indian federal system. Now, this was not very readily conceded to by the power that be at the center. India, as we all know, in fact, was marked by an over-centralizing tendency as far as distribution of powers and resources were concerned. And the government at the center, in fact, would not very readily respond to a demand for restructuring of center-state relations. So, the secular demand for a more equitable share of the country's resources between the center and the states would often go unheeded, unattended, and this would create some sort of a backlash for a separatist tendency to grow. Now, this is how the Akalis in Punjab, who happen to control politics and culture in Punjab, were divided between the moderates and the extremists. The moderates, in fact, would like to follow the norms of democratic politics, demand some changes in the existing relationship between the center and the states, demand more and more resources for the development of the region. In 1966, they got the state of Punjab as a separate state marked off from Haryana and Himachal Pradesh, where the Hindus mostly settled. But the Sikhs in Punjab, in fact, were not supposed to claim their homeland as a land for the Sikhs. It was considered to be the land for these people speaking a different language, that is Gurmukhi and not Hindi. It is through the linguistic idiom that the demand for autonomy of Punjab could be cleansed by the Akalis, who in fact fought right from the time of independence for creation of a separate state. In other words, there would be a demand for a separate nation state altogether comprising the people of Punjab. So there were two distinct, tendencies in the movement launched by the Akalis. One was the movement for changes in the existing distribution of resources between the center and the states, which was very much a secular demand raised from within the federal setup of the country without challenging or questioning it. The other was a demand for separation, a demand for secession. Now, the party or parties ruling at the center took a very interesting position. In order to counter the movement of the moderate Akalis for a more equitable distribution of resources between the center and the states, for some demands for autonomy of the states within the Indian federal polity, they would in fact pamper and patronize sections of the extremists who would be playing a very decisive role in destabilizing the moderate Akalis, who might have sort of come to rule politics in the state of Punjab. Now, from 1967 onwards, this pattern prevailed in Punjab. Whenever the Congress found its authority challenged in that particular region, the Congress in fact would try to look for some factions or allies who would be destabilizing the Akalis in the state and try to sort of help indirectly a Congress regime to be installed in place of the Akali Dal. So the political battle between the Akali Dal and the Congress, which was a secular battle within the democratic system, was now carried into an extreme form where the battle would be joined by some extremist forces who would be looking forward to destabilizing the political system altogether. Now, this is how in fact in the 1980s the Punjab in fact came face to face with a political crisis, with some extremists forming their own political outfits with the demand for a separate Khalistan for the Sikhs, a demand that had to be registered by the Indian state with all its political and military might, resulting in a very unhappy and tragic, showdown in the Golden Temple at Amritsar, resulting in a permanent sort of, breach in the relationship between the Hindus and the Sikhs. The Congress did not gain anything from this process. It had to in fact pay a huge price for sort of the kind of political maneuvers that it employed, and Punjab was destabilized for quite some time. The situation could be salvaged to some extent only after sanity began to prevail and some sort of patchwork could be made. The Akalis in fact were brought back to power, and from time to time they also came to rule the state along with the Indian National Congress. And now it is very interesting to see that in Punjab the Akalis have entered into an alliance with the Bharatiya Janata Party, known for its sort of leanings towards Hindutva, but the alliance has somehow managed to retain peace and stability in Punjab. Although earlier also the people of Punjab were happily placed under the rule of a Sikh Prime Minister who was there ruling the nation for long 10 years. So these three instances of regional politics in South India, in northeastern region of the country, and also in Punjab provide interesting ways of the articulation of regional demands, and also the complex ways in which such demands are handled by the Indian state ruling from the center. We will have occasions afterwards to look into some other manifestations of regional politics in Jammu and Kashmir and also in the Jharkhand region, to which we would come back later.